In this video, I'm going to take you through the entire process of painting this lovely still life, which I've called Ripened Reflections. We'll begin right from the drawing stage using geometric shapes to map everything out, then move into the underpainting, colour layers, and finally the finishing highlights. As always, I start with a raw umber wash to tone the canvas. This gives me a neutral surface to work from and helps establish the values early on. I loosely mark in a few guidelines with my brush. No drawing pencil needed, and then begin sketching the placement of each object using simple geometric shapes, squares, rectangles. At this stage, I'm only thinking about proportion and placement, no curves. Just keep it angular and keep it simple. Once the basic layout is in place, I begin blocking in the shadow shapes, lightly mapping where the darkest areas will sit. Next, I lift out the lighter shapes using a typist eraser. This is one of the wonderful advantages of oil paint, that it's completely flexible at this stage, and you can erase back to the tone underneath to create your lighter areas. Throughout this entire painting, I'm thinking only in shapes. Not tomatoes, not garlic, just shapes and values. Once I'm confident with the placement, I darken the shadow areas and begin defining edges like the tomato stems and garlic bulbs. You'll notice that I'm constantly moving between adding darks and lifting lights, building that structure gradually. Even in the background, I'm paying close attention to the negative shapes, those spaces around and between the objects that help define the composition. When the underpainting is dry, it's time to introduce colour. For each object, I start with 4 tonal values, 2 lights and 2 darks, and I use the underpainting as my map. Where it's dark, I lay my darker tone, and where it's light, I add my lighter colours. Even with just those 4 values, the form of the red tomato begins to come alive almost immediately. I repeat the same process for the green tomato, avocado, asparagus, and the garlic, keeping everything simple at these very early stages. For the background, I mix a warm brownish grey for the walls, and I add a little touch of red for this for those cast shadows. For the tabletop, I mix a lighter, cooler, more bluish grey. This contrast helps the objects stand out and adds subtle realism to the scene. Once the first colour layer is dry, I begin my second. This is where the painting really gains its depth and richness. For the green tomato, I apply a transparent green glaze. This brings out that luminous quality that you simply can't achieve in the first pass. While the glaze is still wet, I will deepen the shadows and add reflected light, such as cool highlights where the garlic catches the tomato. Finally popping on that very thick highlight to really make this tomato look shiny. On the avocado, I use a more textured, painterly approach to suggest that slightly rough surface. I'm using my Rosemary & Co smoosher brushes here, which I love for softening edges and gently blending without losing form. I also use it to blur the avocado and the asparagus slightly, keeping them softer and less detailed, so the red tomato and the garlic remain the focus. I glaze a touch of crimson over the shadow side of the red tomato to deepen the colour. Then add the lighter mid-tones. And finally that crisp white highlight. These touches of thick impasto paint bring that convincing polish and glow. On the garlic, I add a delicate yellow ochre glaze, followed by adding on those details. Cooler, reflected lights in the shadows really help turn that form. And of course, finishing with those much thicker highlights. Finally, I return to the tabletop and add thicker, more opaque brushstrokes to anchor everything in place and make that light feel like it's really glowing. And here is the finished painting, Ripened Reflections. I hope you've enjoyed this full process from those first marks of the underpainting right through to the final gleam of light. If you'd like to learn more about these classical oil painting techniques, you can find hundreds of in-depth tutorials inside the MazArt Academy. The link is in the description box below. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next painting.